Hi everyone, welcome back to Lovin' Off the Land. We are going to do a bit of a different video this week and talk about something we don't normally get into all that much, and that's talk about the soaring price of food that we're all facing no matter where you are in the world right now. Inflation's going through the roof, food prices are soaring, which is obviously a problem that's affecting everybody. One of the things that people aren't focusing quite as much on is the fact that these food corporations, whether it's the grocery stores or the names that you probably don't know, that are the big food manufacturers in the world, that because they aren't front name brands, you probably never even heard about them, are making record profits. And it's not just that their revenues are growing up, but they're charging more and making higher profit margins than they ever have before, while we're paying more at the till. And if you haven't been following along with our channel here, Steph and I first got into kind of learning more about our food and where it comes from during the pandemic, when we kind of realized just how reliant we were on grocery stores and giant corporations to provide us with our most basic needs of food. And we did a one-year challenge to only eat what we could catch, grow, harvest, or raise. And that was absolutely everything. We didn't buy anything from a grocery store. We harvested our salt from the ocean behind us. We grew our own vegetables, raised chickens and pigs, and provide all of our own food, and really kind of gave us a new appreciation for our food, but also kind of brought us into this world of kind of just realizing how big these corporations are and how much control they have over our food and their distribution chains, and how reliant we are on them now as well. And they can charge whatever they want because they've become these huge, massive companies. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, is just getting in and actually showing you guys some of these crazy numbers that these big companies like Cargill and ones like that you've probably never even heard of, that produce pretty much every egg that goes to McDonald's in America, provide Cisco and Walmart and all these major stores, you've never even heard of them, and the billions and billions of profits that they're making, while you and us and the rest of the world are losing money and paying tons at the grocery store. So let's get into showing you some of these examples.
So as I mentioned, there are many big behind-the-scene companies that you may not have heard of, and I'm going to use one of them as an example, Cargill. Cargill is a massive food production company that sells food to many of the big-name food companies that you might recognize, such as McDonald's, Cisco, and Walmart. Almost all of the commercial eggs in the United States go through a Cargill plant at some point, and they're also responsible for 22% of the domestic meat market in the United States. In 2022, while people were paying record prices at the grocery store, their revenues increased 23% to $165 billion. $165 billion. So why have most people never heard of them? Cargill is actually a privately owned company. In fact, it's the largest privately owned company in the United States, and 90% of it is owned by just two families. Being privately owned means that they don't have the same guidelines and scrutiny that publicly traded companies have. In fact, during the pandemic, as their revenues were soaring, they decided to just stop publishing their quarterly results. Pretty interesting timing. While they may have been able to fly under the public radar, they are certainly on the radar of many advocacy groups around the world, such as Mighty Earth, who published a scathing review of them, calling them the worst company in the world. They have had lawsuits filed against them for child trafficking, so that children could be used for cheap labor, and have a long list of issues against them around deforestation for their soy and palm oil production. In 2021, during the pandemic, Cargill made $5 billion in net profit, the most in its 156-year history. As this trend continued in 2022, as I mentioned earlier, their revenues were $165 billion, and out of that they made a profit of $6.68 billion. That's a 33% increase in profits from 2021, while everyone else's food prices are soaring at the grocery store. Also keep in mind that 90% of that $6.68 billion went to just two families. But it's not just one company that's raking in the profits. Let's look at another one that you probably have heard of, Pepsi. While you may think of Pepsi as only a soft drink company, PepsiCo actually owns many household names such as Lay's, Quaker Oats, and Starbucks. In 2021, their profits increased almost 10% to to $42.4 billion. In 2022, they jumped another 8% to $45.8 billion. Their total revenue in 2022 was $86.4 billion. So with profits of $45.8 billion, that means that they had a gross profit margin of 53%. To me, that doesn't sound like they care about their consumers who are now paying an exorbitant price for their Quaker granola bars. Now here's another chart that you may have seen before. It's gone around the internet, and it shows how a number of companies like Pepsi, Nestle, General Mills, and Kellogg's actually own hundreds of different brands. And the record profits that all these companies are making are not isolated incidents. In 2022, McDonald's actually saw a slight decrease in revenue, but had a 5% increase in profit. And what about all those restaurants who suffered so much during the pandemic and also had to deal with the soaring prices of food? One of the main restaurant food suppliers in North America is Sysco. In 2021, Sysco made a profit of over $9 billion, and in 2022, they made a profit of almost $12.5 billion, a 31% increase in their profits. In 2022, Walmart increased their revenue by 2.4% and their profits by 3.5%, widening their profit margins again. In 2019, before the pandemic, Costco made $19.8 billion in profit. In 2022, they made $27.5 billion, almost a 40% increase over the last few years. So what's the solution? While we don't have all the answers, there are definitely some things that we can start doing as consumers to level this playing field. Wherever you can, buy local, support your local farms, and buy food where you know where it's coming from. Also, something that Steph and I have taken on is a challenge to try and provide more of our own food for ourselves. And this doesn't mean you need to go crazy like we did and provide 100% of your own food for a year. Start off with something small. Get chickens, grow some vegetables on a patio. Just start that process of learning where your food comes from and trying to help yourself become more self-sufficient for providing your own food.
And like we said before, we know everyone's in kind of different situations, and you know, if you're a single parent or a family that's struggling to buy groceries, of course you're going to choose a carton of eggs that's $1 less than the other one, and you know, that's totally fine. It's not about kind of judging people for that, but it's about being aware of what's going on and, you know, making changes where you can make changes and buying from your local farms, providing more of your own food and supporting kind of local companies rather than putting more money in the pockets of these giant corporations that are basically developing a monopoly on our food supply, which is kind of crazy when you think about the billions and billions of dollars that these companies are making off of selling us food. So I hope you found that interesting. Again, if you want to go back and see more of our journey to only eat what we can catch, grow, harvest, or raise, we've got a great playlist that covers our weekly videos from week 1 right through week 52 of our kind of challenge and our learning curve as we learn to provide more of our own food. So we hope you guys enjoy that as well. And we'll see you next week for another video here at Lovin' Off the Land.